So the Springboks were able to get themselves the victory over Italy in their July international fixture, but now they move on to match number 2. Now, it was an 18-point victory over Italy, who were valiant in their effort throughout the second half. Rassie Erasmus not 100% happy with how his team was able to perform. So in this one, we're going to be predicting who we think will be selected in match number 2. And I have also got a new guest for this video, ladies and gents. We did have Rugby Itch for the first one. In this one, we have got Janlu. Welcome in, mate. What did you think of that game, first of all, between the Springboks and Italy? Was it quite what you expected with the strong Springboks team?
No, I quite expected a little bit more of the Springboks because I think in the first 15 minutes, it was a little bit of roughness that coming through. The players under the high ball were not quite good with ball in hand. So for me, that first 15 minutes was a little bit of a struggle, but we're getting the momentum over with our wings like Kurtley Arends going over for that fantastic try, and also Morne van der Berg were excited. But the second half, I think, wasn't quite that the Boks wanted to be. The defense was horrible, missing tackles. So quite lots of work to do for the Springboks for the second test.
And Morne van der Berg getting himself 2 tries throughout that match did look extremely strong from that 9 jersey. Like you mentioned, the early handling errors for South Africa were certainly unexpected, definitely with the stack side that they did have going into the fixture. But we will jump straight into your prediction of what you feel Rassie Erasmus will be going with for that front row. Who have you selected for match number 2?
Okay, I got for the front row, I will be going with number 1, Oxenche, number 2, Malcolm Marx, and number 3, Walker Lowe.
Going with exactly the same as they did have for that first one. Dominant scrums from the Springboks throughout that match. So you would expect the same if they do repeat with that same front row. For myself, I've actually made one change, and it's a bit of a bold one. I've gone Oxenche number 1, Bongium Benambi as number 2. Now, that one will be controversial because some would say he didn't have his best performance off the bench for the Springboks, but I wonder the impact off the bench, whether or not they need Malcolm Marx in that bomb squad. Because for me, when you see that bomb squad making their way onto the field, normally it's when Malcolm Marx is out there that you know there's going to be a change in the tempo. Of course, Arges Neyman, Quaka Smith, those type of players can really step it up. But maybe just that little switch. Of course, they do also still have Manus van der Merwe in the squad. So the other possibility would be Marx starting to maybe go Manus van der Merwe off the bench instead of Mbenambi, but I've gone Mbenambi 2 and number 3, Wilco Lowe. With those 2 props, they were dominating the Italians. They did extremely well at times, though, the Italians, to be able to get that ball out of the scrums in those really telling moments. But overall, I do think that we'll see a lot more of the same throughout the second test as we did in the first. In the locking duo, I have gone with identical to that first test also, Eben Etzebeth and the number 4 jersey, and then Ludiacha as the number 5. I do think that the Springboks at line-out time, there were a couple shaky moments, but that was actually more so down to how well Italy were actually being able to read the line-outs rather than what the Springboks were so much as doing wrong. But for yourself, have you gone similar in that department?
For myself, I got similar as you, Eben Etzebeth and Ludiacha, because they were phenomenal in the line-outs. Not the best, but that's my first choice for this one.
Of course, Eben Etzebeth, the most capped Springbok of all time, speaking about experience, and he certainly brings a huge amount of it. The stat that they mentioned throughout that first match up against the Italians, Eben Etzebeth had more caps than the 9 to 23 all combined. So that just shows you how much experience he has under the belt. I believe the bench of the Italians only having around 40 caps in total. So plenty of Springboks out there on the field with more than that amount. But looking at the loose forward trio, Sia Khaleesi not playing in that first match up against the Italians. First of all, it was a neck injury that took him out of that game up against the Barbarians. But now, last game, it was actually a little bit of a nervous Achilles. So that's a bit of a concern for the skipper. But for yourself, have you thrown him in for this match number 2?
Yeah, for me, he is available. So I will be at number 6, Sia Khaleesi. I will be picking him as well.
And then in your 7 and 8 jersey, who have you decided to select to?
7, I got the interesting choice. I got Peter Steftoy. He is also back available for the second number 7. And then at 8, I will be going with the experience of Jasper Wiese. He played well in that first test. So keeping it at 8.
And a pretty solid loose forward trio if they were to go with that. Khaleesi, I'm sure, will be absolutely dying to get some minutes under his belt heading into that rugby championship. Pieter-Steph du Toit the same, having quite a few injury troubles as of late. So for myself, I have gone Sia in their number 6 jersey too. Number 7, if he is available, I've got Pieter-Steph du Toit, but if not, I do think that Vincent Tuchuka has really been able to step up throughout the 2 matches throughout 2025, got himself 2 tries in the game up against the Barbarians, came up just short of scoring due to a bit of obstruction in the first match up against the Italians, and I don't think it will be too long at all before we see Tuchuka cross the try line again. Jesper Wiese, like you said, a physical ball runner in that number 8 jersey, and with the amount of absent 8s due to injuries, I do think he is once again exactly what they need for that number 8 option. They have also got Evan Roos, who is with the squad, who hasn't really been thrown around too much in terms of selection naming. But the thing is, Rassie also, because of that frustration of this side being so strong and not performing, I believe he won't make a huge amount of changes here. He'll want to stick the foundation out there once more, say, play better than you did the first time round up against the Italians. So, Jesper Wiese, I've stuck him in the number 8 jersey, and to be fair, for him to play better than he did in the first match, he'd have to have about a 9 or a 10 out of 10, because he was overall extremely solid. Moving on to the back line, number 9, I am sticking with Morne van den Berg. I think strike while the iron is hot. He is playing very well. Off the bench, Faf de Klerk, I wouldn't say he had a huge amount of impact. I do believe that in that first match up against the Barbarians, of course, very different opposition, but Kobus Reinach did pretty nicely from that number 21 jersey, but Morne van den Berg, his passing has impressed me so much, getting that ball out quickly and partnering with Pollard seemed to be quite a handy combo, but that is not what I've selected for this game. Instead, I've gone Sasha Feinberg, Ngume Zulu as the number 10. I think that 9 and 10 combo could prove very difficult for the Italians, definitely with that little bit of extra pace, and the threat of a running 10 in this matchup could also create more space on the outside. So Sasha and Morne as my 9 and 10 combination. But for yourself, Janlu?
For me, I got an interesting one. I have Grant Williams and number 10, Mani Lubbock. The experience of Grant Williams also didn't play any game time, so I think maybe he will get to start with Mani Lubbock at 10. So interesting. Yeah, that's my number 9 and 10.
Okay, so you made 2 changes in that department. Yeah. Grant Williams, another guy who struggled a little bit with a neck injury throughout the URC season, but one thing that he brings is pure pace when he gets that ball in hand, and also does offer you a position on the wing. So I'm very curious to know what that does to your bench now if you are going with Grant Williams in that number 9 jersey. But moving on now to the centres. For yourself, who have you got in your 12 and 13?
I'm staying with that first one, with the first choice of Damien Dalende and Jesse Crew. That combination is working good for South Africa, so it's an opportunity again for these to step up. So yeah, they could also give maybe a Kanan Mooney a chance, but I think they will step with Damien Dalende and Jesse Crew in the midfield.
And it is exactly what I've decided to go with as well. And with Kriel and Etzebeth in our starting lineup alongside Khaleesi, my big question to you is, are you giving Khaleesi the captaincy back, or are you giving Jesse Kriel another opportunity to be captain here?
I think I will. Russell will give the captaincy back to Khaleesi, the experience of him. So I will be giving Sia the captaincy.
And that seems like, I guess, a bit of a safe bet. Plus, you've got Eben Etzebeth and also Jesse Kriel that you can look at as co-captains if Khaleesi was to go off with a bit of an early injury. Jesse Kriel, I'm sure, will be playing a huge amount of minutes throughout 2025. They have got a few options, like you said, Kane and Moody, perhaps if they do want to look at him as a centre, unless they are, of course, looking at him as a winger for this year. I think the big question mark that I do want to know the answer to, where are they going to play Ethan Hooker? They've got either the option of putting him in the centres, and he can actually play 12 and 13. He's played about 25% throughout his career across 12, 13, 14, and also number 11. So he can pretty much be anywhere in that back line in terms of that middle as well as on the outside. So Ethan Hooker, if you were in charge, would you go with him as a centre or a winger?
I will go with him as a winger. We see him from the Sharks playing at wing, so I will be sticking Ethan Hooker at the wing.
Left or right?
I will play him left wing.
Okay, so that is on the side where we have seen Kurtley Arendse as well as someone like a Makazole Mapimpi. So I guess that moves us on to the back three.
Yes.
Makazole Mapimpi, he does not feature as my left winger. I have gone Kurtley Arendse once again. He had a few early handling errors throughout that match, but overall still an absolutely phenomenal player. Scored himself the try, and also that try-saving tackle in the second half, somehow forcing the Italian into touch. That was what could have been a game-changing moment had Italy scored there. And yes, they were able to score, I believe, not too long after that anyway. But had it not been in touch, perhaps it could have been a whole different momentum swing. So a great bit of work from Arendse, someone who Italy honestly did probably shut down a little bit more than some would have anticipated, was Cheslin Kolbe out on that right wing. He did still, of course, have a pretty busy game, as he always will, because at the end of the day, he's Cheslin Kolbe. But I do think that he personally would have loved to get a little bit more involved throughout this match. And perhaps it was also because we were seeing more of an up and under game at times coming with Pollard compared to that game up against the Barbarians, where Sasha Feinberg, Ngume Zulu, it was opted more so for the running game rather than the kicking. But yeah, I do think it will be intriguing with Cheslin Kolbe, Kurtley Arendse out on those wings throughout 2025. There can be some pure damage to opposition sides throughout this year. Number 15, I've actually made a switch here. I have gone back to Apalele Fasi. I think that he was pretty strong up against the Barbarians. Damien Valimza, we've got to remember this was his first game back after his suspension, but I think that Fasi does fit better with Sasha Feinberg, Ngume Zulu, and with the fact that I've made that change in the 10 jersey, I think it makes sense to have him at 15 here as well. But for yourself, who have you got in the back three?
For myself, I stick with the two Power Rangers for South Africa, Kurtley Arendse and Cheslin Kolbe. And then at 15, I will give Willie Leroux to play at number 15 for South Africa this weekend. So to see if maybe he's 100 games, and let's see how it goes. But the second choice I'm going also with, if it's not going to be Willie, I will be sticking with Damien Williams, so giving him another opportunity to play at 15 for the Springboks, because we know the talent that he's having. He's good with we see in that first test against Italy how he's running through stepping the players, and so I would Damien Williams is the second choice for Willie Leroux at 15.
And it's probably a very good point that you've made, because Rassie does like to give milestone players the start. And whether or not this is the game that Willie Leroux gets to that 100, or whether they will save him for that match up against the Georgians. But he's one of those players, Willie, who when he starts, I do think that he offers a certain something that is different to Valimza as well as Apalele Fasi. And we have seen it at times for the Bulls throughout the URC. So do you think, in terms of the combination, you've gone Mani Libok at 10 with Willie Leroux at 15, is that the best partner for Willie Leroux with Mani Libok? Or would you say one of those other two fly halves are the better fit with his style?
I think the better fit by the style would be Shasha at 10 with Willie at the back.
The benefit that they've got as well is they've got so much choice, and they're spoiled for the amount of players. We're not even mentioning someone like a Kuan Horn, who was initially in the squad, who has been taken out. Perhaps once Willie Leroux does hang up the Springbok boots, we could see him move into the side. You've also got, I know that some people don't like his form at the moment, but someone like a Jordan Hendrickse could even play at 15. He did actually play there for the Lions for quite a bit of time. You've also got, even if you really had to, you could look at Cheslin Kolbe as an option of going into that 15, or Sasha Feinberg, Ngume Zulu. They are spoiled for choice if they really needed to switch it. But now we move on to the bench. So the first question I've got for you, Janlu, is 6-2 split or 5-3 for this matchup?
I'm going with a 6-2 split again.
Okay, so I have actually decided to make a shuffle in mine, and I'm going with the 5-3 in this contest, but we can still start with the front rowers. For yourself, who are your replacement front row in this contest?
Well, for me, I'm not very happy with Bongi's performance coming from the bench. So I will be putting Magnus van der Merwe, giving him an opportunity again in the second one at number 16.
So he did play up against the Barbarians in that number 16 jersey. For the short amount of time that we did get to see him out there on the park, what did you think of his overall performance? Is he someone that you could see in the Springboks kit for quite some time? Or is there someone else you do prefer as a hooker?
I can maybe see Magnus van der Merwe to play along for South Africa, because we know in the Baba's game for that plenty of content that he was good with the lineouts, so he could be possibly an option for Racing to. He's still young, so he still have opportunity. So I will be having Marnus van der Merwe to play a long time for South Africa.
So now we move on to those two replacement props. Have you got Vincent Koch in the number 18 jersey? Of course, finally getting that first Springbok try. It has been a long time coming, but he finally crosses the chalk.
Yes, absolutely. I got with Jan-Hendrik Wessels at number 17 and then the experience of Vincent Koch at number 18. That is mine.
So my front row is very similar in that regard. I've got Jan-Hendrik Wessels and Vincent Koch as the 17 and 18. And then in that number 16 jersey, this is where I have got Malcolm Marx. I do think that Rassie Erasmus, he seemed a little bit distraught in that press conference afterwards in terms of people were saying the bomb squad's been diffused, which, yes, it was a slightly lackluster performance, but at the end of the day, it's the bomb squad. They are going to fire back in another contest, and they will be firing all throughout the Rugby Championship as well. So I just feel like reinforcing that with Malcolm Marx, because a strong line out at the end of the game for South Africa up against the Italians, I think could have completely changed the scoreline. But then you could also argue, had that been the case with Malcolm off the bench, that means Bongi in the starting lineup. If his lineouts were shaky, perhaps we wouldn't have seen South Africa score as much as they did in that first half. But I do think Malcolm Marx, he seems to be the gel that holds that front row together, whether he's starting or making his way off the bench. So I'd love to see him somewhere across the 23-man side up against the Italians. Moving on to my other two forward replacements, as I have just got the two, Argus Neyman as my number 19, and then the number 20, Kwagga Smith. I don't feel Franco Mostert really did anything wrong. It's just more of the case of I've got something else up my sleeve in those 21, 22, and 23 jerseys. But Kwagga, Mr. Impact off the bench, as I like to call him, we got to see moments for him, but I think that Italy actually did pretty well to shut him down. Plus, with the amount of hectic attack that we saw from the Italians, we probably didn't see the best performance from Kwagga in terms of getting his normal steals in the breakdown. But like I said, he'll come back out in this game and he could have an absolute blinder. So for yourself, your three replacement forwards, who have you got?
For myself, I got Argus Neyman at 19 with Franco Mostert. I'm going to stay with him at number 20. And then the former of Kwagga Smith, he's the guy stole a lot of ball there in the second test. And it will be quite good to see how many times he will. Maybe he comes on straight in the second half, or just 10 minutes after this second half started. Maybe Kwagga Smith. And when we are not accuracy with the ball, and he can give us turnovers, then we can play the back line, let the ball go to the back line.
So just at this stage, you've got the one change across your forwards off the bench, and that is just Marnus van der Merwe rather than Mbonambi. Moving on to your back replacements now. You have just got the two. So who have you gone with?
I got with this department, I got with the experience of Faf de Klerk. And then, interesting, at number 23, I will go with Sasha at number 23, coming from the bench this game, just to see this experience of Sasha. He can also start. I'm not worried where Omani or Sasha starting in the second test. So I will go with the Sasha, the replacement for the last one at number 23.
And he did play pretty well up against the Barbarians in that first match. Seemed to be in control. I'd assume that Sasha is your replacement 10 in this case, although I guess he actually has to cover multiple positions, doesn't he, with Faf de Klerk as the other man off the bench. But yeah, versatility, something that Sasha certainly has, and hopefully just can avoid those injuries, because at the end of the day, I think he's one of the big keys for South Africa heading into the Rugby Championship. The young man has a lot of hype, and at times it's for a very good reason, because he can be an absolute superstar out there on the field. For myself, off the bench for the back replacements, I've got number 21, Cobus Reinach. Like I said, I felt like he played pretty well up against the Barbarians, and Rassie may look to get that little bit of a quicker finish to the match. I do think that de Klerk, don't get me wrong, once again, relatively solid, although we didn't get to see a huge amount of him due to the amount of attack for the Italians. But Reinach, he's not afraid to go for those piercing runs, and that's where someone like a Grant Williams could also perhaps find himself off the bench in this game if he's match fit. Number 22, I have actually gone with Handré Pollard, and the main reason behind that is I want a lot of safety later on in the contest when it comes to that kicking tee. Handré Pollard slotting them over for fun up against Italy. You know, when you've got Pollard on the field, he's going to give you 90, if not 100% when it comes to those kicks. And also that combination of Reinach and Pollard could be a bit of a hidden gem for South Africa throughout this year. Number 23, I've gone with the hybrid, Andre Esterhuizen. So that is why I haven't got the 6-2 split, because theoretically, that man can be my replacement flanker if need be, or he can come into the centres or wherever it is that Rassie wants to play him next. But with that being said, those are our starting lineups and reserves of what we feel Rassie Erasmus will be going with in this contest. It is taking place at the exact same time as the last match did. Nelson Mandela Bay Stadium, a massive celebration, as it is 30 years since the South Africans won the 1995 Rugby World Cup. So there will certainly be a massive celebration there, as well as a huge amount of passion coming from the fans and at the stands as well. But I do thank you all very much for watching. Also, I do thank JanluBrand for coming on the channel. Anyone who doesn't know who this man is, be sure to check out his link in the description. He does some Afrikaans commentary for certain games, as well as the English commentary and there as well. But thank you very much for coming on the channel, mate. Anyone who is new, be sure to leave a like and subscribe to the channel. Let us know, of course, who you think Rassie Erasmus will be going with in the comments down below. And I will see you all for the next one.